After Star Wars was released, it became apparent that my story, however many films it took to tell, was only one of thousands that could be told about the characters who inhabited its galaxy. But these were not the stories that I was destined to tell. Instead, they would spring from the imagination of other writers, inspired by the glimpse of a galaxy that Star Wars provided. Today, it is an amazing, if unexpected, legacy of Star Wars that so many gifted writers are contributing new stories to that saga. George Lucas, from the introduction of A Splinters of the Mind's Eye, 1996. Welcome back to the Skywalker Files from a certain point of view. I'm your host, Rockwell, and today we're turning our attention to The Moment of Truth, a story that sits squarely in that uncomfortable space where Jedi intentions are noble, the situation is already spiraling, and the consequences will linger long after the lightsabers are switched off. This episode drops Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker into a tense corner of the galaxy, where military occupation, political brinkmanship, and classified intelligence are all colliding at once. It's a mission framed as preventative, humanitarian, and very reasonable, which, as experience has taught us, means it will test every assumption the Jedi bring with them. As always, we'll take our time unpacking where the story fits in the timeline, who's involved, and what it tells us about the Jedi Order at this particular moment, especially when patience, restraint, and moral clarity are in increasingly short supply. So settle in, files open, force slightly uneasy, and expectations appropriately managed. This is The Moment of Truth. The Moment of Truth is written by Jude Watson, a storyteller who quietly shaped how an entire generation understands the years between the films. The years when Anakin Skywalker isn't yet a Sith Lord, but very clearly isn't just another Padawan either. Watson specializes in the uncomfortable middle ground. Not destiny fulfilled, not innocence preserved, but the slow, grinding process of becoming. By the time this story takes place, the galaxy is still technically at peace. And like most peace in the late Republic, it's conditional, fragile, and entirely dependent on no one ambitious deciding to test the borders. The Clone Wars haven't begun yet, but the ingredients are already measured, mixed, and sitting ominously on the counter. This places The Moment of Truth squarely between The Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones. During Obi-Wan Kenobi's early years as a Jedi Knight, responsible not just for his own actions, but for shaping the future of the Chosen One. Qui-Gon Jinn is gone, the Council is cautious, and Obi-Wan is still learning the delicate art of sounding confident while privately wondering if he's in over his head. Anakin, meanwhile, is growing more powerful, more impatient, and more aware that the galaxy rarely rewards restraint. Politically, the Republic has adopted its favorite coping mechanism, delegating problems to the Jedi and hoping that resolves them quietly. Systems on the fringes like Typha Dor are left to navigate threats from more militarized neighbors with minimal support, while aggressor worlds like Vanqor exploit the Republic's reluctance to escalate. Vanqor's conquest of the Uzul system hasn't triggered open war because it hasn't inconvenienced the right people yet. And so the Jedi are sent in, not as conquerors or commanders, but as intermediaries. Their job is to retrieve information, stabilize the situation, and ideally prevent a conflict that would force the Republic to acknowledge how precarious things have become. It's a familiar assignment, small mission, enormous implications, and absolute no margin for error. This is the era when Jedi heroism becomes procedural, where doing the right thing requires navigating politics, military pressure, and moral compromise, all while training a Padawan who feels the tension of the galaxy more acutely than anyone would like to admit. The moment of truth exists in that narrow space before the dam breaks, a story set on the edge of escalation when everyone involved believes there's still time to choose a better outcome, and the Force, as always, remains non-committal. At the center of Moment of Truth, as one might expect, are Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker, locked once again in the delicate, occasionally combustible master-apprentice arrangement that the Jedi Order insists is functioning perfectly. Obi-Wan enters this story firmly in his role as the responsible adult in the room, or at least the one wearing the title. Still early in his career as a Jedi Knight, Obi-Wan is balancing duty, diplomacy, and the quiet pressure of living up to Qui-Gon Jinn's legacy. He believes in the Order, believes in patience, and believes, sometimes against mounting evidence, that situations can be resolved without catastrophic consequences. His greatest challenge isn't Vanqor's military aggression or political brinkmanship. It's teaching Anakin restraint while modeling it himself, even when events seem designed to test both. Then there's Anakin Skywalker, already powerful, already frustrated, and already deeply uncomfortable with the Jedi preference for waiting until things become unavoidable. Anakin's role in the story reinforces a recurring truth of the era. He is less of a Padawan being trained and more of a Force being managed. His compassion is genuine, his anger never far from the surface, and his sense of justice is far more personal than the Council would prefer. When events strip him away of his agency, as they so often do, it's not merely dangerous, it's formative. Hovering at the edges of the narrative, and then stepping fully into the light where everyone immediately regrets it, is Jenna Zan Arbor, an outlawed scientist with a long history of unethical experimentation. Zan Arbor represents the sort of villain that the Jedi find deeply inconvenient. She's not openly Sith, not politically powerful, just horrifyingly pragmatic. Her work on the zone of self-containment treats sentient beings as test subjects in pursuit of progress, and her interest in Anakin is entirely clinical, which somehow makes it worse. Surrounding them are the rescued workers of TY-44, additional Jedi allies, and the occupying force of Vanqor, all of whom serve as a reminder that this conflict isn't abstract. Lives are already being controlled, experimented on, and sacrificed long before the Republic officially notices there's a problem. Together, these characters form a familiar but uneasy constellation, a mentor trying to slow things down, a Padawan who feels time slipping away, and a galaxy that rewards decisive action far more often than careful wisdom. It's not yet a tragedy, but it's rehearsing for one. The moment of truth begins with what the Jedi would classify as a preventative mission. A phrase which, translated from Jedi High Council, means we're fairly sure something bad is about to happen and we'd like you to stop it quietly. Obi-Wan and Anakin are dispatched to the surveillance post on TY-44, a moon of Typha Dor, to extract a group of workers who possess intelligence on Vanqor's invasion plans. These workers aren't soldiers or diplomats, they're civilians caught in the machinery of military occupation, valuable only because of what they know. The rescue itself is swift, tense, and almost reassuringly competent, right up until the galaxy reminds everyone that competence does not guarantee control. Their escape is interrupted by enemy fire, leaving their ship damaged, low on fuel, and with only one viable option: an emergency landing on Vanqor itself. It's classic Star Wars maneuver. Flee directly into the heart of the problem and hope the Force appreciates the irony. Once on Vanqor, the mission fractures. Anakin and the TY-44 workers are captured and sent to a prison camp hidden among the Tomo craters, a place designed less for containment than for disappearance. This is where the story takes a sharp tonal turn. The camp isn't merely a military holding facility, it's a laboratory. Enter Jaina Zan Arbor, whose experiments with the zone of self-containment are designed to strip individuals of initiative, emotion, and resistance. In other words, the complete neutralization of free will. And it's tested, naturally, on Anakin Skywalker. The tonal shift here becomes notably darker and more intimate. Anakin's experience under the drug isn't just physical imprisonment, it's psychological erosion. His thoughts slow, his will dulls, and the very traits that make him powerful are methodically suppressed. For a character whose identity is so closely tied to agency and feeling, this is a uniquely cruel form of captivity, and the Jedi Order, as an institution, is nowhere nearby to object. Obi-Wan's arc during the stretch is defined by pursuit and frustration. He follows the trail, fights through obstacles, including, because fate enjoys theatrics, a Gundark's nest, and eventually rescues Anakin with the assistance of the other Jedi. The relief is real, but it's fleeting, because while the Jedi are reacting, Vanqor was acting. By the time Obi-Wan and Anakin return toward Typha Dor, the invasion has already begun. The preventative phase of the mission is over. What remains is damage control. Typha Dor's fleet engages Vanqor's force with Jedi support, and only through a combination of resistance and political pressure is Vanqor forced to surrender and enter peace negotiations under its ruler Van Ith. Thematically, the moment of truth is about timing and agency. Who gets to act? Who is forced to react? And what happens when moral restraint slows you just enough for violence to get ahead of you? It examines the Jedi's reliance on measured response in a galaxy increasingly dominated by preemptive force. Vanqor's aggression is born of scarcity and fear, but its methods mirror the very control the Jedi claim to oppose. At its core, the story integrates the cost of using individuals as a means to an end. The workers of TY-44 are valued for their information. Anakin is valued for his potential. Even peace itself becomes something to be engineered and negotiated rather than chosen. The moment of truth isn't a single revelation. It's the realization that doing the right thing late can look uncomfortably similar to doing the wrong thing early. On the surface, the moment of truth presents itself as a localized conflict. A single system, a single aggressor world, and a single invasion narrowly averted. The kind of problem the Republic prefers to label as contained. But like most things in the late Republic, containment is largely a matter of perspective. Vanqor's expansion across the Usul system reflects a pattern we see repeatedly in this era. Worlds acting unilaterally because they no longer trust the Republic to protect them. Resource poor but military strong, Vanqor doesn't conquer out of cruelty so much as calculation. Its leaders believe survival belongs to those willing to act first, and that philosophy mirrors the growing unease spreading across the galaxy as central authority weakens. For the Jedi, this story fits squarely into their increasingly uncomfortable role as firefighters rather than guardians. They're sent in after the tensions have already escalated, tasked with preventing wars without the authority to truly stop them. Obi-Wan and Anakin are not negotiating treaties or restructuring power. They're buying time. And as the story demonstrates, time is a resource the Jedi are already running low on. Anakin's imprisonment and experimentation under Jenna Zan Arbor also connects this story to a broader, unsettling trend. The galaxy's fascination with controlling power rather than understanding it. Zan Arbor's zone of self-containment isn't Sith sorcery or dark side mysticism. It's science, clinical, and detached. This reinforces a recurring theme across pre-Clone Wars stories. The dangers Anakin faces aren't limited to the dark side. He is just as vulnerable to institutions, experiments, and progress that view him as a tool. Politically, the resolution of the conflict, forcing Vanqor into surrender and negotiations, foreshadows the Republic's later reliance on overwhelming force backed by Jedi legitimacy. Peace is achieved not because grievances are resolved, but because resistance becomes untenable. It's effective, it's efficient, and it's quietly normalized the idea that stability can be imposed. Most importantly, the moment of truth contains the long arc of Obi-Wan and Anakin's relationship within the wider saga. Obi-Wan's restraint and Anakin's urgency are once again placed in opposition, shaped by events that reward decisive over deliberation. Each mission like this subtly reinforces Anakin's belief that action, immediate, forceful action, is the only language the galaxy truly respects. In the grander Star Wars narrative, this story sits like a pressure point, small enough to overlook, but vital in understanding how the Jedi Order drifts from peacekeepers to wartime generals. The invasion is stopped, negotiations are held, and the system survives. But the galaxy moves one step closer to accepting war as inevitable, which, as history will show, is a remarkably short step. The moment of truth isn't a story about triumph. It's a story about containment, of damage, of fallout, and of uncomfortable realization the Jedi would rather file away and revisit. The invasion is stopped, negotiations are open, and the system survives. On paper, it's a success, which, in the pre-Clone Wars era, is often the most misleading word available. What makes this entry quietly effective is how little it celebrates its ending. Peace is achieved, but only after lives are disrupted. Autonomy is violated, and Anakin Skywalker is subjected to yet another formative trauma that will never make it into an official report. The Jedi intervene, but they do so late, and the story never lets us forget that timing mattered just as much as intent. For Obi-Wan, the mission reinforces his familiar burden. He does everything right, follows the code, exercises restraint, seeks solutions that minimize harm, and yet events still outpace him. The galaxy doesn't reward patience here. It merely tolerates it. That tension between who Obi-Wan is and what the galaxy increasingly demands sits at the heart of the story. For Anakin, the lesson is more dangerous. He learns once again that control, taken or imposed, wins conflicts. That institutions hesitate. That waiting allows others to act first. The fact that the final resolution requires force and pressure rather than understanding only deepens a belief he's already forming. That power, decisively applied, is more reliable than principle. In the end, the moment of truth earns its title not through dramatic revelation, but through a quick acknowledgement. The truth is the Jedi are already reacting to a galaxy slipping out of their grasp. The truth is that the peace achieved under duress is fragile. And the truth, perhaps the most uncomfortable of all, is that everyone involved can plausibly claim they did the right thing. History, as we know, will be less forgiving. And that was the moment of truth. A mission that started with a simple rescue and quickly spiraled into imprisonment, experiments, gundarks, and the battle the Jedi arrived slightly too late to prevent. Anakin's recklessness collided with Obi-Wan's restraint. Typha Dor's survival relied on quick thinking and a fleet of latecomers. And Jenna's Ann Arbor reminded us all why rogue scientists are best left ignored. It wasn't tidy, but in the end, the galaxy survived. And the Jedi did what they do best. Cleaned up the mess and called it a mission accomplished. Next time, we'll be looking at the changing of the guard, where leadership, loyalty, and the subtleties of guiding others take center stage. Obi-Wan and Anakin will be tested not by fleets of gundarks, but by the very human and occasionally maddening challenges of authority and responsibility. The galaxy never waits, the Jedi never rest, and we'll be there to chronicle every inconvenient, ill-timed moment. I'm Rockwell, and this has been the Skywalker Files from a certain point of view. Until next time, may the Force be with you.